Hi, I'm Colin. Welcome to Learn Somatics. Today I'm going to answer some of the most common questions I get about somatic movements and your practice in general. So let's get into it. So one of the most common questions we get is how many repetitions should I do and how often should I practice? So let's get into the first one. How many repetitions should you do of a movement? The answer is it depends, really. As a general rule, you want to do about a minimum of 3 repetitions of a movement so that you have 3 opportunities to feel the movements, practice it, feel the muscles contract, feel the muscles relax. And 3 is a good number for that. But essentially, if you think about what the goal of the movements is, it's easier to get an idea of how many you need to do. The goal is to relax the muscles in question. So if you're doing arch and flatten and you do 5 repetitions and your back feels relaxed, that's great. You can move on to the next movement or finish your practice, whatever you're doing. If you're doing a movement and you do 5 or 6 repetitions and you still feel like it needs a bit more, you can do a couple of more repetitions as well. A good ballpark number is between 3 and 6 repetitions. In or around there should provide plenty of release for most of the movements. Arch and flatten you can do more because it's a pretty easy movement, but for something a little more vigorous like say a back lift or a side bend, that 3 to 6 number will probably serve you well. The best thing to do is do a couple of repetitions, lay out on your back, see how it feels, and if you feel like you've got the improvement you were looking for, you can move on. But it's going to vary depending on your skill level and how much tension you have in your system. So in the beginning, more is going to be better, and then as you become more accustomed to a movement, you'll probably be able to do less repetitions of it. You also want to focus on, in terms of the quality of the movement, making sure the release phase of your movement is smooth. If you're coming down and the movement feels jerky or not smooth, like there's bumps in a record, that kind of a thing, you want to repeat the movement and see if you can go a little bit slower and just smooth out the section that was bumpy. Once the movement is smooth, that's another good indication that you've re-established good control and you can move on to the next movement. So as a general guideline for your how many repetitions, somewhere between 3 and 6. And if you feel like you need to do a little bit more or a little bit less, that's totally fine. It's up to you. Try and get into the habit of self-assessing and getting can you figure out for yourself how many repetitions you need to do. If you keep the goal in mind, as I said, that you're trying to relax, that can guide your practice, and you can make a decision then, okay, I feel relaxed, I can move on. Now, the next part of that question is, how often should I practice? In the beginning, we recommend you practice twice a day. And that's for the simple fact that the more you practice, the quicker you're going to become proficient and the quicker you're going to get results. Once you're at a point where you feel pretty comfortable in your body again, you're feeling nice and loose, pretty relaxed, your activities are feeling easier, at that point then you can whittle it down a little bit, maybe once a day or 3 or 4 times a week. You can start to cut the cloth to fit. But in the beginning, we do recommend practicing twice a day. It's going to increase the speed at which you become proficient at the movements and get a feel for them. They do require a little bit of practice. People sometimes ask, can you do a movement twice in a day? And see, absolutely. You can do a movement 3 times in a day if you really want to. If there's a movement that's really helping you, do it as much as you want. There's no real downside to doing more of those movements. It's not going to have any ill effects, let's say. So yeah, feel free, do as much practice as you want, and then as you become proficient, as you start feeling better, you can reduce the amount you're doing. So it becomes more like maintenance as opposed to trying to problem solve or address a specific issue. The next most common question we get is all about the breathing. How do you breathe when you do the movements? And this is a tricky one for me to do in the videos because I'm talking as I'm moving, so I can't always address that so clearly. But as a general rule, you're going to inhale on the effort part of the movement and you're going to exhale on the release part of the movement. And if you use that as a guide, you'll probably be in a good place. The exception to that is when you're doing any movement that involves folding forward. So the curling movements, the startle reflex movements, those kind of movements, you're probably actually going to be better to exhale as you go into the folded forward position and inhale as you come out. And then on rotational movements, as you get long, allow yourself to exhale. So if you're doing a wash rag, say, as your knees tip over, you're going to exhale, and then you're going to inhale as you come back to the middle. And that fits with what I said about inhaling on the effort. You're inhaling. The effort in the wash rag is as you come back to the middle point. As the legs tip out, that's the relaxation phase. That's when you're going to exhale. But the main thing to keep in mind is just not to hold your breath. If you're holding your breath when you're doing the movements, you are on some level holding tension, right? So just be conscious that if you're struggling a little bit with when to inhale, when to exhale, just breathe normally in a way that feels comfortable and natural for you during the movement, and that will be fine. And then as you become more proficient at the movement, you will be able to breathe in a way that gives you the most benefit. But as a general rule, it's going to be inhale on the effort, exhale on the release, except when you're going into a folding forward movement. So if you're flexing forward. Another question that comes up, if you have one side that is tight, do you just work on the side that's tight, or do you need to do both sides? And you want to do both sides, because if you've been going around for a while with one side that is tight, you'll have developed a compensatory way of moving with that side tight, which will have affected the other side in some way. So if you have one side that's tight, yes, you want to release that side, then you'll definitely want to do the other side, because it also allows you to compare the experience of doing the two sides, and you'll probably find they feel quite different. And in doing the two sides, you'll even them up, you'll regain control of both sides equally, and that'll help to ensure that you don't get tight on the side that was initially tight again. So it just reorganizes things and helps you integrate the changes better. You may even find you need to go tight side, the less tight side, and maybe back to the tight side again. And that's an interesting thing to do, go back and forth between two sides of a movement, say a side bend or something. You'll notice it starts to open up the whole both sides together. So yes, you do need to do both sides. You've got two sides, you want to be able to use both sides, so please do both sides. And after you do one-sided movements, such as a side bend, that kind of thing, you'll probably want to do some rotation afterwards, because that'll help to lengthen things out even further, and it also addresses both sides at the same time when you're doing that. So yes, do both sides and do some rotation afterwards. That's really going to help you. Now, here's an interesting question that we get quite a bit, is can a muscle be weak and tight? And I'm going to give you the somatic perspective on this. Sometimes people will feel that the muscles are tight, but that they're also weak. They can't do much with them. And it's not that the muscle is weak per se, it's that the muscle is constantly contracted, which is why it's tight, right? It's always working. And muscles that are always working are fatigued. So the weakness is a result of the fatigue from being tight all the time, if that makes sense. Once you relax those muscles and they no longer have to work 24/7, they're able to work when you need them and then be at rest when you don't need them, then those muscles, the power, the strength will return because they're no longer fatigued. They're having an opportunity to get a break from work at some point. So can a muscle be weak and tight? Not exactly. It can feel weak and tight, but it's just fatigued because it's working all the time. So again, you do your practice, contract it on purpose, slowly release. That puts it into a normal resting level of tension. You're able to use it when you need it. You're able to have it not be contracted when you don't need it, and therefore it won't feel weak anymore. Okay, so another interesting question I got was, how long does it take to see the benefits of a particular movement? And again, the answer is it depends. But essentially, if you are doing the movement correctly and you're actually able to feel the muscles contracting and feel them relaxing, you should feel some benefit pretty much immediately. But it will depend on how accurate you are with what you're doing, which is why we have to practice, which is why we have to get on the floor every day, practice these things, pay attention to what we're feeling. Can I feel the contraction? Can I feel the release? If you approach it in that manner, you'll absolutely feel some benefits immediately. You may not get to the exact source of your particular problem. That might require a different movement or combining a couple of movements together. So yes, you should feel some benefits immediately once the muscles are relaxed, or once you've done the movements, should I say, lay out flat. Check. Do I feel better? Do I feel more comfortable, softer, quieter? All of those things. If you do, there's your benefit. That's fine. Then you can stand up, take a walk around and see if it feels different. But yes, benefits should be definitely fast. Now, if you go back to doing everything else in your life the way you were doing it previously, perhaps sitting in a particular way, or an activity that you might be doing, a repetitive activity, you may reinstate some of that tension again, some of that problem, which means you'll then have to go back and repeat the movements. So it's not a one-time fix. You can't just expect to do a somatic movement for your back, say, and then never have to do it again, because your back's going to be getting tight all the time because you have to do stuff, right? You have to do your hobbies, deal with families, relationships, kids, all those things. You've got to be moving out in the world. So your back's probably going to tighten up a little bit again. But the more you do your practice, the more awareness you will have of that. And you'll notice when your back is getting tight and you can say, oh, I need to get on the floor and do my arch and flatten later tonight so I can keep my back nice and relaxed. So yes, the benefits should come quick, but it's not permanent because nothing is permanent in life. You're going to have to maintain. Once you get things relaxed, you're going to have to maintain by doing your practice on a regular basis. Okay, so there's some of the most common questions we get about somatics. I hope you found that helpful. If you like this format of video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment in the comment section below. And if you'd like more of these videos, if you'd like me to answer more questions, pop your questions in the comment section below and I'll do another video addressing those questions. Also, if you need some help with a specific problem and you'd like to work with me directly, there's a link in the description. You can book a consultation with me. I can watch you in real time, give you real-time feedback, real-time instruction, and point out some of the nuances and smaller details of things that can really make a big difference in the benefits you get from your practice. All right, until next time, keep practicing and I'll see you in another video.